Welcome to Truth Watchers. I am Heath Henning. With the recent passing of James Dobson, I thought it would be worth discussing why psychology is incompatible with true Christianity. I have written about Dobson specifically, but I feel like it would be inappropriate to discuss him so recently after his passing. Therefore, I will deal with the issue of Christian psychology in a general terms. Gary Collins, who believed in integrating psychology and Christianity, stated, quote, "Psychology is a science attempting to use precisely defined scientific terms. The Bible, on the other hand, is not a scientific volume and uses terms which are much more difficult to define with precision. Words like ego, emotions, and depression are psychological terms which do not have clear parallels in scriptural language. On the other hand, words like mind, soul, or spirit are biblical terms which are psychologically meaningless." Unquote. If the biblical term soul, being translated from the Greek word psyche, is meaningless in psychology, then the whole system of psychology is meaningless since it is derived from that very word. Furthermore, it cannot be, quote, a science, unquote, since the psyche is not something physical that can be dissected or observed. The same can be said about ego, emotion, and depression. Ed Bulkey pointed out, quote, "Dealing with the human mind and soul, however, is an entirely different matter. No one has yet observed a mind or dissected an emotion. No X-ray scan has ever detected the soul. Psychologists are not even sure how to define the mind." Unquote. Indeed, we need to be cautious of proponents of a movement that asserts such illogical things in an attempt to make their views sound authoritative. Psychology is far from a science, and it is a lie to present it as such. Bulkey further asserted, quote, "The point is that human thinking and behavior cannot be categorized scientifically because each human is unique, and one's reaction to events, circumstances, or other stimuli cannot be predicted or tested using the scientific method. Psychology rarely deals with established facts or truths, but with subjective opinions and interpretations of uncontrolled observations. Psychology is not dealing with the consistent interactions between chemicals that can be carefully controlled in a laboratory, but with analyses that are tainted by the unique free wills of the subjects and the mindset of the researchers." Unquote. Here is one point that we need to focus on. First and foremost, psychology is not science by any stretch of the word. So when we quoted above Gary Collins, who said psychology is a science, but the Bible is not a scientific volume, not only is he overreaching the bounds of psychology, he is also denying the Bible is inerrant. Of course, he didn't outright say that he denies the inerrancy, but in essence, he has subjected the Bible to the authority of psychology. Theologian Charles Ryrie noted in his Basic Theology, page 78, "Some lifestyle errors that may follow a denial of inerrancy include a tendency to view the Bible through a modern psychological grid." Unquote. Indeed, any attempt to integrate psychology and scriptures will cause confusion in theology. Why will it cause theological confusion? Because the modern psychological theories, which abound with self-contradicting opinions, are dependent on secular assumptions. It should be obvious when the foundation is wrong, whatever is built on top will follow the wrong trajectory. John Ankerberg and John Weldon wrote on page 8 of their book, The Facts on Self-Esteem, Psychology, and the Recovery Movement, quote, "The presuppositions that provide the general framework within which most psychology is practiced include the following: 1. Naturalism, 2. Materialism, 3. Reductionism, 4. Determinism, 5. Evolution, 6. Empiricism, 7. Relativism, 8. Humanism, and 9. Increasingly, occultism." Unquote. Notice most of these philosophical ideas outright deny the existence of the soul. How can psychology be the study of the psyche when it denies the existence of the soul from its very foundational philosophical presuppositions? Naturalism, materialism, evolution, humanism. There is no recognition of the soul in these philosophies. Consider further the fact that some of these presuppositions are strictly in opposition to the Bible. Relativism rejects absolute morals. How can that be synchronized with the Ten Commandments? One thing the Bible condemns is occultism. Is the Bible's condemnation of occultism relativistic or an absolute rejection of the practice as a sin? If occultism is a sin in the Bible, psychology is as well. Gary Kaw wrote in his book, The New World Religion, page 61, quote, "In reality, modern psychology is a bankrupt religion with no real capacity for helping people. Under the guise of psychology, occult concepts have gained acceptance as being legitimate scientific principles. Hence, occultism is increasingly moving forward in the name of psychology and the human sciences." Unquote. The fact that occultism runs rampant in psychology is no secret. Many authors have discussed this issue. Carol Matriciana, former occultist herself, acknowledged, quote, "Psychology and psychotherapies, most influential thinkers such as Freud, Jung, Pavlov, Skinner, and Maslow were atheists, drug users, occultists, and avowed humanists. Yet their techniques and psychological remedies are popular in Christian circles." Unquote. How can this be? Are Christians confused or just ignorant of the Bible? Well, the reality is a whole lot of people identify themselves as Christians when they're anything but Christian in truth. Even statistics provided by organizations such as Pew Research Center and others continuously give statistics about Christians with a way too liberal definition of Christianity. I think way before men were identifying as women to compete in sports, wolves were identifying as sheep to infiltrate churches. Sadly, these wolves write influential books synchronizing false philosophies with the Bible, and sheep are truly dumb creatures. They always act like the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Sheep will eat right out of the hand of some ravening wolf. Carl Jung is a perfect example of how occultism has crept into Christianity through psychology. Martin and Deidre Bobgin wrote about Jung in their book, The End of Christian Psychology, page 157, quote, "He delved deeply into the occult, practiced necromancy, and had daily contact with disembodied spirits, which he called archetypes. Jung described his whole house crammed full of spirits crying out to him." Unquote. This is not just some disgruntled Christian author making up wild claims to attack psychology. Carl Jung wrote about this in his autobiography, titled Memories, Dreams, Reflections. On page 192, he stated, quote, "These conversations with the dead formed a kind of prelude to what I had to communicate to the world about the unconscious, a kind of pattern of order and interpretation of its general content." Unquote. So he literally admits that what he communicated to the world, that is referring to his system of psychology, was originated from the spirits of the dead that communicated with him. Douglas Gruthwis also wrote about Jung in his book, Jesus in an Age of Controversy, page 80, saying, quote, "In 1916, after experiencing some bizarre paranormal events, Jung wrote in 3 nights a mystical tract called The Seven Sermons to the Dead. He ascribed this writing to Basilides, a Gnostic teacher of the 2nd century in Alexandria." Unquote. So Jung has written books either under the occult method of automatic writing or at the dictation of these spirits that spoke to him. He not only admits to contact with the spirits of the dead, he attributes these personalities to Gnostic teachers. Whatever one wants to think about Jung's psychology, it is obviously heretical. At best, his system of thought is from the long-dead Gnostic heretic. At worst, it originates from a demon. In no way can this be compatible with the Bible or true Christianity. In fact, Jung openly admitted to be demonically possessed. Quoting again from his autobiography, page 356, he wrote, quote, "There was a demon in me, and in the end its presence proved decisive. It overpowered me, and if I was at times ruthless, it was because I was in the grip of a demon." Unquote. Sounds like a great psychologist, don't you think? Another one of these spirits Jung spoke of, he called Philemon. He wrote of this spirit in his autobiography, stating, quote, "Psychologically, Philemon represented superior insight. He was a mysterious figure to me. At times he seemed to be quite real, as if he were a living personality. I went walking up and down the garden with him, and to me he was what the Indians call a guru." Unquote. A guru is generally viewed as some sort of spiritual teacher. Jung was guided and taught by this spirit. It should be noted also that Jung and Freud worked close together with each other for a period of approximately 6 years. These two men have influenced all other schools of psychology that have appeared after their deaths. Psychiatrist Thomas Szasz stated in his book, The Myth of Psychotherapy, page 146, quote, "One of Freud's most powerful motives in life was the desire to inflict vengeance on Christianity for its traditional anti-Semitism." Unquote. Freud was notoriously addicted to cocaine. He viewed it as a cure-all miracle drug, giving it to friends and families as gifts, even over-prescribing it to one of his best friends so that he died from an overdose. Freud's goal was to liberate man from having a guilty conscience so man could pursue his instinctual wishes. Those are his words, instinctual wishes, which are in reality the darkest desires deep in man's sinful nature. What Freud actually defined as the instinctual wishes is most disturbing. Freud wrote in his book, The Future of an Illusion, page 13, quote, "Among these instinctual wishes are those of incest, cannibalism, and the lust for killing." Unquote. Incest, cannibalism, and killing. Great idea, Freud. Let's free men of their conscience so they can fulfill these instinctual wishes. Freud's goal was to clear his own conscience by making his diabolical perversions the social norm. To think that psychology is literally permeated with drug-induced ideas from an atheistic Christian hater or demon-possessed spiritist makes it hard to think why would any Christian trust psychology. These factors are part of the reasoning behind Jay Adams' following comment from his book, More Than Redemption. Quote, "In my opinion, advocating, allowing, and practicing psychiatric and psychoanalytical dogmas within the church is every bit as pagan and heretical, and therefore perilous, as propagating the teachings of some of the most bizarre cults. The only vital difference is that the cults are less dangerous because their errors are more identifiable." Unquote. Historically, it appears that Norman Vincent Peale was the first to strongly promote and influence the infiltration of psychology into Christianity. A website provides the following biography of Norman Vincent Peale, saying, quote, "Peale confessed that as a youth he had the worst inferiority complex of all, and developed his positive thinking, positive confession philosophy just to help himself. In 1937, Peale established a clinic with Freudian psychiatrist Dr. Smiley Blanton in the basement of the Marble Collegiate Church. Blanton brought with him the extensive experience of having undergone psychoanalysis by Freud himself in Vienna in 1929, 1935, 1936, and 1937. The clinic was described as having a theoretical base that was Jungian, with a strong evidence of neo and post-Freudianism. It subsequently grew to an operation with more than 20 psychiatric doctors and psychologically trained ministers, and in 1951 became known as the American Foundation for Religion and Psychiatry. In 1972, it merged with the Academy of Religion and Mental Health to form the Institute of Religion and Health, IRH. To his death, Peel remained affiliated with the IRH as president of the board and chief fundraiser. Indeed, Peel pioneered the merger of theology and psychology, which became known as Christian psychology, unquote. Norman Vincent Peale's theological influence was spread through Robert Schuller to many of the megachurch pastors, including Rick Warren. There is truly no underestimating how far spread this heresy of psychology has influenced Christianity. Many people are grieving the death of Dr. James Dobson, and I don't mean to be rude to his family or loved ones mourning over their recent loss. However, Dr. Dobson has played a major role in popularizing the spread of psychology in churches around the world. He may have done more damage to Christianity than any other individual in this generation. This is Heath Henning. Thank you for tuning into Truth Watchers podcast. Remember to hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend. For more fascinating facts, check us out at truthwatchers.com, because sound apologetics and exegesis of scriptures is important for all of God's children, as is indicated in 3 John verse 4. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth.